Hello, everyone.
Hey.
My goodness, it's such a pleasure to be part of this incredible movement. I really just have to say that first and foremost. So thank you both, Jari and Shannon, for this opportunity and for everyone for joining us today. We are personally a little bit of technical difficulties, so my partner Julia is kind of troubleshooting while I get us going, and hopefully everything gets sorted out and she'll be back to join us. But first I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jari Majewski, and I have, along with my partner Julia, started a nonprofit dance studio that makes dance and music fully accessible to the deaf, hard of hearing, and individuals with special needs. And it is an ever-growing process. We are constantly learning and developing and growing. And what we've been able to do thus far is create a incredibly unique and innovative dance curriculum, you know, taking what we all know as dancers and dance teachers and merging that with what is going to work for students with different needs, whether it be intellectual, physical, emotional, behavioral, hearing impairments, visual impairments, differences, the whole gamut. And along with that, because we have such a specific niche in deaf education and that whole world, what we were able to do is experiment through a ton of research, create this really beautiful, sound accessible vibrational dance floor. So, and it doesn't actually like move and vibrate. What it does is resonate through your bones and create the sensation of sound. So you are fully hearing or feeling or experiencing every element of music, but it's actually through the element of touch and contact between your body, your bones, and it circulating through to your inner ear. And it's absolutely magical to see the difference and the impact it has on the students and the community that we work with. It's really special. So with that, I just wanted to give you guys just a quick overview of Feel the Beat, and then I have some really great curriculum suggestions and tools for you guys to play with, to implement, to, you know, just start planting that seed and seeing what you guys can develop from that, and to really help you grow as you wish and hopefully continue a partnership if this was something you were passionate about including in your dance studios. We are always Our mission is furthering accessibility in the elements of dance and music experiences. So really those kinds of connections and partnerships is what helps this grow and expand the realm of accessibility. So, so with that, I'm gonna quickly share my screen first. Is that a good one, you guys? How are you guys doing today, by the way? I feel like everyone's like, I know we're all across the country, right?
Can I also share a little bit, Jari, about what we're going to be doing with Liberate? And because we have Danielle here, who runs a dance convention. She's one of our sponsors, and she's also an educator. And we at Liberate, so actually, like, to be quite honest, and even though we are I'm Jari, by the way, I run Liberate Artists, so they haven't met me yet, but for us, like, I was like, Jari, like, let's make forward movement so accessible, and like, let's do like all this stuff, and Jerry's like, okay, you're giving me a week, you can't, just having sign language is not making this accessible. And it's like, all of us need to check ourselves. Like, even me, who's like, let's make sure dance is for all kids, I don't understand specifically what action steps we need to take in order to make dance accessible for dancers with special needs, dancers that are hearing impaired. And like, even in all the work we're doing, like, we can always still be better. And I think that is so important to like, I appreciate that. And you didn't check me like that, but you could have, and I would have been like, yep, I totally understand. Because like we can all do better. And also like, I do believe that things can be financially like assist like great and also be good for the world and the community. Those things are not mutually exclusive. So we're going to be incorporating Jari's flooring into our system starting in 2022 or 2021. We'll see what we can get done. The sooner the better, so that we can really promote and market to kids that, you know, don't feel like they have dance spaces safe for them in the convention kind of world. I don't really consider myself a convention. I consider what we do like complement to the convention world, but like making things accessible for all and growing your business and your organization can be the same kind of forward movement.
Yeah.
I just want to say that.
Thank you, Jari. And you know what, that's like a great, you know, transition to how we got started actually. And I'm now going to share my screen and I'm just going to talk through it, but hold on. Come on. All right, you guys can all see, or it's loading, but see. All right. So kind of exactly what Jari was just speaking to begin with, Julia and myself were in the deaf ed and special needs classrooms. And one of the things that just the mass population, without really, you know, coming from a good place, coming from the desire to create accessibility without necessarily knowing the most effective structure, their first go-to is let's provide sign language, let's provide an interpreter. Now, if you had no connection to understanding music and arts and dance and bridging that gap between dance and music and having your body move in that notion, what does language do for you? You know, if someone was standing in front of your dance classroom or any classroom and just providing that, this is Julia, by the way, and just providing that kind of linguistic input and feedback, what is that really in the realm of accessibility? Are they really grasping the world and experience of what you're trying to provide them? Mind you, yes, is that a first step to create accessibility if there's nothing else at your fingertips? Totally, don't not provide it. But that's where Julie and I wanted to begin with, pushing that envelope, seeing what other ways can we provide. So that's pretty much the student that we like created this for, just FYI. Her name's Amy. She's the heart of Feel the Beat, and you could see that smile. We started because we had worked with so many students who were both deaf and with secondary needs. So be it physical, intellectual, behavioral, visual, what have you, providing those sign language aspects of a curriculum or sign language interpreters weren't going to do the trick for these kids. So you had to get tactile, you had to get hands-on, you had to get creative with props and tools and visuals and things like that. This is our little timeline. Just the whole experimental project, really. But we began with playing with different elements of what can provide that tactile, vibrational, feeling sound kind of experience for these kids. and that led us to our current studio. And actually, we've built a portable vibrational dance floor, which is what we can bring to the movement convention, whenever you like calling it, in New York in 2022, I believe. But that's, like that's one amazingly profound area of providing sound, music, dance access is through that floor, because by default, even if you didn't have those accessible teachers available to you, they at least have the connection of that tactile experience of music and sound. And that's just like first touch. Second touch would be providing that interpreter. And then third touch specifically is the kind of curriculum and unique tactics and techniques that we use and we've found to be really effective with this population. And that's what we will move into. Quickly though, I wanted to give Julia, she's more of the scientific brain in this partnership. And I wanted to give her just a quick few minutes to discuss like really what goes into making sound accessible and having you actually feel the beat. So this is Julia Faliano.
Hi everyone. So without having you here to actually feel the floor or look at some of the images we have of what's underneath the floor, I'm going to do my best to really quickly explain what is underneath the floor, and then we can talk a little bit about how your body processes that input in order to have that sensation. So in our dance floor, we've got our hard top, beautiful white oak dance floor that's on top, and underneath it we have a subfloor. And so under our subfloor, there are bone conduction transducers. Those are the UFO-looking saucers you can see in the picture to your left there. And they're suspended by a bolt to that subfloor. So you don't actually have contact of transducer directly onto wood. The transducer has the freedom to vibrate in the air. And so what it's doing is it's taking those air vibrations, which is sound waves, the way that you and I typically are able to sense and process sound is through the air, and it changes them, transfers them into a mechanical input. So instead of sound waves coming through the air, you have a physical form of sound, similar to how when you take music and you burn it onto a CD, you're coding it into zeros and ones. You're changing that sound into an equivalent that's physical. So now you've got this little UFO saucer vibrating in air, and it's going to transmit up into the subfloor and above that into the hard dance floor. And so without anybody on it, there's the floor operating. As soon as you put your feet on that floor, that mechanical vibration moves from the floor to your actual physical bone structure. So it makes bones in your feet vibrate, and those physical sensations travel up your body until those little tiny bones in your inner ears do their dance, and your brain's neurons fire just like you're perceiving sound through the air. So it's the exact same process that you and I perceive sound, except it's happening mechanically instead of through the air. It's difficult to perceive a super huge difference as a hearing person because your brain is firing the same way. But for some of these students who don't process sound through the air, it's that aha moment of now I can hear this sound. Anything else you want me to touch on? That was like my summary.
Beautiful. I love that. She really pinpoints exactly how to get that point across. It's awesome. And of course, there's nothing quite like actually experiencing what that feeling and sensation is like, but at least this gives a little overview of the possibilities in this realm. You're welcome to stay. All right, now moving on to some curriculum tactics. I think I could exit this. All right. So, in the creation of our really particular integrative curriculum. We kind of break it down into 3 pillars. It's how we like to think about it and how we like to just really break down and structure our classes. So one of those being an integrative practice, one being the pacing, timing, and rhythmic strategic instruction. Like think to yourselves, all right, I've never experienced what music is like. I've never experienced moving my body along with timing, in coordination, along with a song that I have no experience of, and how to provide that link to those students who don't have any access to that, or by default. And then most importantly are the modifications that we're able to provide and get creative with, and how we physically make the room and the class and the movements accessible for these kids. So, hold on, let me just my notes. All right, so consider your dancers, your studio, your students. One of the first things that we like to do is begin with like pre-registration on our registration form online, what have you. One of the questions that we include in that registration form is, are there any accommodations that would be beneficial to provide your student? Really just first inquiring, like maybe there's 1,000 different examples, but maybe someone's going to share with you that they have physical differences, a visual difference or disability, hearing, sensory needs. There's a whole gamut of difficulties that different students can experience, but they don't necessarily know the means to approach you about it or give you a heads up, and that's just one of those ways, without directly asking, like, does your kid have a disability or this or that? It's, are there any accommodations that would be beneficial? Something of that nature. So that's kind of tier 1. And then we're able to start doing our planning. So once that particular child comes in, we're able to either think to yourself, do we need to provide one-on-one, like we have volunteer support or a teacher's assistant in the classroom? Do we need to provide different sensory materials and like class props? Do we need, I'm trying to like think without giving you everything all at once. Do I need to adjust my choreography? Do I need to provide some kind of balance support? Does this child need a chair? Does, the list goes on and on. But you're able to start getting those wheels turning or start these conversations like, hey, I have this so-and-so child coming into my class next Wednesday. Do you have any ideas? Or I can do some research, rather than it just coming up on the spot and not necessarily feeling like you're able to fully fulfill that student's need, All right, so at Feel the Beat, particularly, and this works for really like the whole range of students that we work with, but everything that we began to develop was really pinpointing those deaf and hard of hearing students. So just keep that in the back of your mind, but there's still like every type of student that we work with in between there. So we begin each and every class connecting with the song's rhythm, connecting our bodies to the floor, specifically for us, but if you don't have the floor, and a song's on, you just start with getting that rhythm into their bodies, all right? Before I even add counting, before I add movement, before I add anything else of importance to teaching a dance class, I just make sure for us, first we put our hands on the floor, and like they, mind you, they have the experience already because they're standing on it, but like that just gets that like sharp connection, like, okay, this is the beat that we're following along with. And we just start putting it into our bodies. Then I'll have us tap our foot along with it. And then once I can, you know, like you kind of go around the room, making sure everyone's really finding that beat. And if they're not, I'll put it on them for them, you know, or we'll do it together, you know, like hand over hand. Once I see that we're all kind of in unison, we all start tapping our foot, you know, just as if you were going to get ready to march or what have you. Start tapping that foot along with the rhythm. Then you add the next layer, which is counting. I do both vocal, you know, verbal counting and sign language counting. So it provides that visual cue. And for those who need the auditory cue, it's providing both at the same time, but they really, it's like breaking down, like this is actually what goes into why your body moves with song, you know, where for some of us it's intuitive, or some of us, we've grown up with music in the background and it makes sense. We have an internal rhythm. They can certainly have an internal rhythm. They just don't have that internal rhythm in connection with what a song sounds like, you know? So it's providing that information where there's a gap. So we have that beat on our bodies, we have the movement in our foot, and then we start the counting, you know, whatever it is. You could also provide like visual schedules or written counts, or there's also, you know, like the lights that go along with music. There's lots of different brands and kinds. That's another way. If you don't have, you know, we're not all going to have the floor tomorrow, but there's a whole gamut of ways that you can provide that visual input. And that actually works incredibly well for those on the spectrum, for those with sensory integration difficulties. It's helpful for those for pre-planning purposes if you have a physical disability. So this doesn't just work for those, you know, hearing impaired children, you know, or students. I keep saying kids, sorry. All right, so once we kind of move through those rhythm practices and motions, you know, we do a normal warm up, so to speak. I just always keep connecting and implementing those rhythmic and pacing reminders and practices. So no matter what you're doing, I'm personally always counting visually and vocally. I will always, as long as your students are all right with it, I will always provide tactile informational instruction, you know, like going up to them. And a lot of them have, sorry, I'm going to move my screen down, issues with, you know, crossing over and recentering, or switching hands back and forth, or doing two things at the same time. It's not that they can't do it, it's that their brain doesn't have that pre-processing and like motor planning ready yet and experience. So you providing that tactile information for them and working with them, that gives them the muscle memory, and that's like an automatic learn. You know, like once you have muscle memory in your body, they don't even realize they've learned it, and they're able to recall that movement or that practice. You know, we've all experienced that just as dancers, as human beings, you know. But that's like really, really important for these individuals. So that's a great tool that you can constantly use. Just looking through my notes so I don't skip anything. So then there's, and I briefly mentioned this before, if you're working with students, particularly with some behavioral difficulties or behavioral, emotional, as well as any students who are on the spectrum, one of the most effective things you can do for them is provide a visual schedule. Actually, I have, hold on one second. All right, so it's not like totally up to date right now, but visual schedule. We also have one that has pictures instead or alongside of. And then we have, what's it called? Like a little like Velcro sticker that you could move down. So like you could visually show the transition from warm up to across the floor to stretching to choreography, water break, what have you. But this kind of gets rid of that that difficulty with transitions, with, you know, like without even realizing it or understanding it, that typically is a big trigger for students on the spectrum or with those kind of behavioral emotional needs. And that just provides such an easy, quick kind of fix for that, you know? And it also provides like that question and answer, like, hey, when are we going to get to, when do we have water break? When are we going to get to choreography? When are we have a drum section? When are we, you know, they're always wanting to skip around to different parts of the class. Oh, well, let's take a look at the visual schedule. I didn't make it up. It's what's on the visual schedule, you know, and then boom, your problem's kind of solved. And then they could continue to keep track for themselves. You could also have them come up and move, you know, like, hey, we're finished with the warm up. Come change over to across the floor. And they can move that little Velcro sticker or whatever you're using down one. So they are physically getting, oh, okay, we're transitioning. You know, like that's a great, great tool for some of those kids. Next, I mean, this may come as an obvious kind of piece of information, but whether we really get how much it impacts and helps these kids, I don't know. Sometimes when you have so many kids in the classroom, it's hard. You know, you have to balance everyone's needs, everyone's abilities, everyone's skill level. So this can get lost, but making sure to break everything down so slowly it's almost painful, but it's what is helping them implement a full body movement, or whether it's a routine, an across the floor activity or practice. A great example is the grapevine. For some, happens automatically, right? For some, it's just one big mental and physical mishmash, and a lot of these students go to is getting frustrated, giving up, or just doing their own thing, walking across the floor. Like, I can't do that, but I'll do something else. All right, let's take this back. There's no wrong making. There's only learning and progress, you know, and let's do this together. There's 3 different ways 3 or 4 ways I would differentiate for just the grapevine, and you could use this across the board for different movements. 1, I will get in front of the student. So this is hard to do not in sign language. I'm always signing. So if I'm facing the mirror and the student's right behind me, rather than mirroring, you know, facing the student, I will move my arms in the same way my legs are moving. That provides that like extra, oh, okay, we're open. Now we're crossing. Now we're open. Now we're crossing in the back. and I give that cue also verbally and manually through sign language, but breaking it down in a way that makes sense to them that's not necessarily technical, you know? Like, I'm trying to think of like a term I use. Whatever, put that aside. So using both parts of your both limbs, you know, all limbs, to really physically show how your body is moving across the floor like that. That's one. Two is providing actual visual trackers on the floor, whether it be like little hula hoops or those flat rings, you know, so they're not gonna move and wobble, where to step in and where to step out of. You can use those dots, where did I put those? You know, like the little like dot things. You like put them in different places where your foot placement is going to go, so that kind of provides the map for them. Another way is actually, and I said this earlier, is actually doing it with them, kind of hand over hand, or them having their hands on your shoulders as you move, so they actually get, oh, we're opening our body, oh, we're moving forward and crossing our body, we're opening, we're crossing. And you know, none of these tools are like, oh, this works for everyone. It's really, and it's tedious, but it's finding like which trick works for each student, which thing can I try that's going to finally bring that aha moment. And it happens. You just personally have to be patient and remind them to be patient, because they will get it. You just gotta, you know, figure out the button to push, you know. The last kind of effort I would go to that it would be like my last resort is to actually move their foot or their arm or whatever you're doing, to have them just get, oh, this is the sensation my body's supposed to be in. And you're not going to do it like the whole time. It's just if they're really having that they're experiencing a struggle, getting that foot behind them. Or a lot of our students, for instance, will get only half the grapevine. Like they'll go side, back, side, back, side, back, or side forward. They don't get the whole element of transitioning and switching back and forth, providing that tactile positioning, so that again they perceive that muscle memory and then they can implement it again. That can be really helpful as well. So, you know, those are just some things to think about. And again, this is planting a seed so that you can start thinking of, well, what other ways could work for my students? You know, like what else could I try? Half of what we do is trial and error and experimenting. You know, there's a lot of this we've gotten input from research, from like the trauma field, from occupational therapists, for, you know, a whole team of people. But then there's also so much that's unknown, and a lot of what we develop is really through trial and error and seeing what has the most impact, you know, seeing what clicks for these students. So moving on to some modifications that we can think of and implement or start really brainstorming with, you know, and you guys can, again, this isn't like these are the only tools that work. This is like, this is what we've found. Go experiment too and share it, you know. We want more and ongoing accessibility and expanding this realm. So the more we can create, the better.
Absolutely. We can keep on Facebook and social medias, and we'll be sure to continue it. I just wanted to let you know you have about 10 minutes left.
Perfect. That's exactly where we're at. Sorry, I need to. Okay. So modifications. We've already gone over Well, first and foremost, do you guys, when I use the term modifications, are we familiar with what that means? I use it like it's second nature, but I just wanted to make sure there's a group understanding, you know, that's really just taking what is in the environment and what is in your curriculum and figuring out how you can change and adapt and provide different accommodations within the structure that you're already given so that it works for different students and different needs. All right. So one, we've already got the physical contact of the floor, of how you're teaching and modifying that curriculum through putting the beat onto your body, providing the counting visually, vocally, providing the visual schedule. Other things we've done in our particular curriculum, we actually have a drum section, not like we bring out drums, like drumsticks, and we create the rhythm on the floor. This is really, really great for the students because it provides them the experience of creating music rather than following music. And that starts to have their pre-planning and their processing work differently than just trying to copy or just trying to find the beat or find the music. They're actually getting the experience of making it. And it provides, we also give each student a turn to create a rhythm or a drumstick pattern or what have you, and then we all follow and go around kind of in a circle. Now this is fun, of course, and it gives them individual freedom and freedom to create, but it also provides empowerment. It provides growth in confidence. It takes away that element of, am I doing it right or wrong? It's just like, I'm creating this and whatever I create is right. And then you guys are following. You know, it really, it's, I would say the majority of our students, like favorite time of class. There's a few that, you know, they could do without, or they don't like the noise or whatever. But really like this is a very special part of the class, and the kids light up and they get really creative with it, and they try to get more and more like challenging. Like it's real, like they challenge me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. But like, it's incredible to watch them create, you know? Other ways that you can kind of put the same practice into play during movement and during, like, whether it's choreography or across the floor, whatever. Think of like a lyrical class, and this can go for any genre of dance, but in lyrical, it's like you could give a story and ask, how would you tell that story with your body? So we can do the same thing with, how would you move across the floor if you were moving like rain, like it's raining outside? How would you move your body across the floor if you were being a monkey? How would you move across the floor if, and you, I mean, like literally you can provide any example, story, list, whatever, but it again provides the experience of them getting creative, them being able to create, the empowerment, the confidence building, removing the right or wrong, you know, like all those things just further develop and further build their skills and understanding of movement and dance and all that.
And just be careful with the monkey reference. I know that's not what you're saying with Black people specifically. I just be careful.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just saying.
It's the monkey, you know, like.
I know, but you know, there's just I would be a
giraffe. Does giraffe work better? I mean, we literally for our creative movement, just a heads up. So what we do for like the little ones, we will literally do like 15 minutes of what's your favorite animal? Like move across the floor like your favorite animal. So like we don't give the animal. They just, most of the time it's in sign language. So like giraffe, we have dinosaurs, we have turtles, we have crabs, like everything. So yeah, thank you. But it's actually in the kids' hands, so. And most of the time it's not even vocal, right? It's just that visual movement. But I didn't know that. Thank you, Jari. I'm sorry if that
No,
ever.
I think if students choose it specifically, that's totally different. But just due to like the historical history of, that has happened, we just have to be careful and more like, oh, okay, okay, now I see this. If they choose to do this, that's cool. But putting that on people, it's not you specifically, because your intention is not that. It's all of the other history that comes with that.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate that. I will provide, you can move like a bird or a giraffe or an elephant. Elephant's a big one. Also, everyone try moving like an octopus. It's real special. You give that a whirl. The students ask for it, All right, so some other modifications. One of the biggest that I can suggest to you guys is dance and movement is a universal language, and we do not need the element of voice to break everything down and to implement instruction. I know it's second nature, but if you think about kind of like if you guys go to a Zumba class, they almost hardly ever speak. It's like all with hand signals. You don't need to know how to sign to provide those visual cues. So that is a really, really powerful tool. And extra bonus, you will be surprised if you turn off the use of your voice, students pay so much closer attention. Like, oh my gosh, one of the coolest things I've ever experienced are kids on the spectrum, kids with physical needs, kids like all over the place that are typically like runners or will, bolt throughout the class or whatever. They're like following along like you've never seen because they can't miss literally a beat. Like, it's so cool. So that's just a little fun fact and great thing for you to try. 3 minutes. All right. Some other things you can use, and I'm sure you guys have found certain tools like this working with the little ones, but things like color coding or I can't think of the word. Color coding, but providing like red means right, blue means left, whatever you want to do. Wearing a scrunchie, that signifies the color, because the literal word and those linguistic technical cues, it kind of means nothing to some of these students. So those visuals don't need to know sign language. It's just a visual cue. Works for a gamut of students with different needs. You can also use scarves for the same kind of purpose. And we as well can use, what's it called? Like those, I have like the little cones, but if you have two different colors, it's like right foot, kick or tap, left foot, kick or tap. You could just do lots of different things like that. We also work with, those like little square bean bags. Great for balance if you're working on core support. Gives them something else to focus on rather than the movement, but like whether you're like picking your knees up while walking across the floor, keeping it straight while, doing kicks or side steps or whatever, they're focused more on that than getting the movement right, and they end up getting the movement right. It's also a great way, like if certain students are really struggling with, and I have adults that struggle with this, with different needs, with right and left, and whether I mirror them or if I have my back to them, they're still just not able to grasp that. Using what's it called, that bean bag, as like putting it on this leg, lifting it up. Oh, look, that's our right leg. Like that's the right, you know, you got it. Down. Now putting it on this leg and down. You could also provide a full class seated, you know. We have used, you know, those mobile ballet bars, like where there's one on either side. They use this, I think, in like rehab centers. You could use that for mobile stability for students who are using a walker or just have some like gross motor or balance difficulties. Like that's a solution right there. It's providing that. Some of our students actually go to the ballet bar that's on the wall and like put their weight on it, lean back, have that as what they use for their balance support, and move with the rest of their body. We also will modify our choreography. Great example is if a student, oh, thank you, time. If a student is in a walker, you're only implementing choreography or showing them this is your movement, you know, or this is something you could do, only moving one arm at a time so they always have that stability, and only providing like or modifying their movements across the floor to going like in a vertical line rather than going side to side. Like if you're in a walker, you can't really like scooch it side to side, right? Same thing more or less with a wheelchair. So just, you know, some things to think about, guys. It's, again, it's an ever-growing, evolving process and education for us all. These are just a few, you know, snippets, a taste of some of the modifications and developments we've implemented inside of our curriculum. One of the things that I kind of just want to give you guys that you can start with right now, whether it's on your own or with your own students who are, for lack of a better word, like mainstream, like students without any differences, limitations, what have you, you can challenge both yourself and them to experience a class with, you know, as someone with visual needs, wearing a blindfold, sitting in a chair, one hand tied behind their backs, with music off and voices off. Like you can actually have these kinds of challenges to personally experience and then provide that experience for your students. And then like, how would you move and do X, Y, and Z if you weren't using your hands? You know, how would you move or show this piece of choreography if you were seated in a chair? That provides you guys with the ability to get creative, as well as them to experience the compassion and build that empathy by default, you know? And then integrating any of your classes. If you have a few students with different needs, having them inside your currently running classes, or having your current students volunteer in a class for those like all abilities classes, you know, like that will give them that sense of empathy by default. Like you are practicing it and so are they, and then that just kind of ripples through the whole community and your school and has a beautiful effect. So it's been a pleasure, guys. Oh, really? Oh, I didn't see. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, I see questions now. I'm so sorry.
No, Jari, you're fine. I was about to say thank you so much for hosting this really beautiful seminar and encouraging us to be more intentional with our teaching pedagogy, as well as really making sure we are being inclusive and aware and giving us a lot of things to think about. For folks that do need to run over to the Fresh Reading hip hop class that is happening over in the creators room, but nothing's happening in this room after this conversation, so we can keep it going. It's okay. The question that just came in is your floor your invention, or is it something that can actually be purchased?
Great question. So the technology, like the actual bone conduction device that we use, that's out there. That's what Beethoven used, or he, I guess, technically invented, or by default invented. It's been out there for centuries. The floor is our invention. We have the mobile element of the floor is patented and can be bought or donated or used or whatever in any kind of facility, school, studio, venue, what have you. That's kind of our ultimate goal, is to really provide that sound accessible experience and opportunity anywhere and everywhere internationally, you know, not just nationwide. Like, this should just be an opportunity that anyone and everyone can have access to, right? So yeah, if you are interested in the floor, or figuring out how to use it on a small scale, like sometimes just having like one square of them rather than an entire floor, or there's so many different solutions. We're actually, I don't even know if you know this, we're actually working with an accessible brewery here in Colorado. It's so freaking cool, but like everything is like color coded for accessible purposes, and physically accessible, and sensory accessible, like just everything. They're also putting together a table. It's like a big round table that's going to have our technology, so that area provides that sound accessible environment, you know, so it's not like they have to rip up the entire brewery's flooring, you know, like there's so many ways to get creative. And we're always, you know, after this, please, anyone and everyone who would like to reach out and figure out different means for accessible curriculum use, or the accessible flooring, like, please,
We'll also share all of these links, Jari, too. Everything's going to be shared from every session. So at the end, just so everybody knows, before the inclusionary action kind of worksheet that we're asking for you to submit, we're going to submit you all of the videos again and all of the resources, so that you can leave with materials to move forward with, because we know this is a lot of information, but we want you to be able to reference back this conversation, because the slides that Feel the Beat presented are so beneficial, just to be like, oh wait, what was this floor about that we talked about? Oh, I see how it's made. I see how it can be integrated. So I think this is just a first moving forward, first step to, you know, creating inclusivity and equity for all. Anybody that needs to leave. I would love to just finish up these questions. Shannon, thank you for mentioning that we have time.
Thank you.
The next question, I feel like you addressed it a little bit, but if you would like to kind of expound on that, of how you recommend classes be divided with mixed ability or all ability, and how you think that could be enriching.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that we like rediscuss quite often, you know. Particularly the way we do it, and the way I recommend beginning, at least. If you were particularly partnering, let's say, with a program that offers services to special needs, a respite care center, what have you, I would and along with that, those students have more severe intellectual, physical, behavioral needs. I would not integrate those students with others, just on the realm of safety, you know, safety for our students with different needs, and safety for our like general ed students, you know, until you have that certainty and that like reassurance that both parties can handle that and that you can provide a safe and well-structured environment. That's how I would really begin. And then if you were just going to say, offer, I know like some studios here offer, like every Saturday at noon is our all abilities dance class, you know? I mean, like there's no negative in that. I think for me, the first step to integration is offering that class as like a volunteer opportunity for your other students to start getting that the comfort level built in, the empathy. I can't even tell you without, and I've shared this with Jari, one of the first times we were talking about this. It is so beautiful how our other students have developed this empathetic, like helpful, I don't even know what to call it, side, just like excited to help, excited to volunteer. Like I showed you that picture of Amy. We have students that are like, I'll hold Amy's hand across the floor, or like, I'll stand next to Amy today. Or two students just like sitting in the corner, like one can only sign and one only speaks, and they're like figuring out how to communicate, or like just the coolest stuff. And we didn't purposefully teach that, you know? It's not like I said, hey, you guys are gonna partner today and you guys are gonna learn how to speak with each other. Like, no, it's just beautiful, and it's through demonstration, and it's treating them like typical kids, you know, and not making anyone feel different or special or what have you. It's just like, oh, Mads is in class and she needs someone next to her and her walker. So-and-so will either walk next to her, or we just give a heads up, she gets extra space because it takes up more space for her to move. Or she gets like out of control with the movement of the walker sometimes. And there's just a natural development of understanding and compassion and helpfulness, and it's a beautiful like default structure. So that's kind of how I would begin that transition of integration. And now actually, like this coming year, we're going to, mind you, we've always offered classes more so on like skill level and an age, and like if it's the right fit for a general ed student and a student with different needs and it works, it's perfectly fine. Like we do most of our classes like that. But as we're starting to build and grow, the next step that we're going to be doing is one, offering, I mean, the way you guys run dance studios, but it hasn't applied to us until now, providing just like skill levels along with, you know, like the ages alongside of it, but almost like making sure like each student like has the prerequisites, you know, like they meet that skill level. It doesn't matter what your needs are, as long as you have that capability, you're all in that class together. If you don't, then you're in a different skill level. It's perfectly fine. We will also offer higher level classes. The competitive style classes will also have an all abilities competitive group class that you know, they can also experience the element and realm of competitions. And then, oh, Shannon, sorry, I just saw a tail. And then we're also going to be having what we call like access the beat or feel the beat access classes that are particularly for students who either don't feel comfortable in those like general skill level classes, or need more of that like creative movement environment. They're not necessarily here to acquire skills, you know, like particular dance skills, but they want to move, they want to have fun, they want to have this experience and opportunity just like other kids. They just don't need like that week-to-week curriculum, you know. So does that hope that helps answers some questions?
Well, I mean, the answers you're giving are amazing. Thank you. They are, it gives us all so much to think about as educators, and to really kind of iris in on inclusion, and it's very exciting. There is another question. There were two questions that came in. One, have you been able to continue through the pandemic? Which I know that's like loaded, or you can be like yes or no. Totally up to you how you want to answer that. And the second is just came in. Do you have any advice for what to say to regular ed students that don't have that sort of empathy or compassion and are vocal about not being okay with students of all ability in one integrated classroom?
That's a really great question. Really great question. Quickly, COVID question. The ultimate answer, like everyone else, we went virtually. We've had to, so we for our DHH students, which is deaf and hard of hearing students, we can't really offer live classes because what is accessible for each DHH student is different per student. So what we've done is do pre-recorded classes that are both taught vocally and manually in sign. Then we transition that into like iMovie or what have you, add in captioning. So it gives that visual language element. And we're able to provide a visual beat tracker. So it can at least provide that element and counts, whatever. Definitely is not the same as having the floor. That's just kind of is what it is. It's definitely led to us getting more and more creative with how we can experiment with like at-home floor devices, whether it's just like a small something or, whatever. We're experimenting and more to come. But that's kind of where we're at. We're offering as much accessible like pre-recorded classes as we can. And then we also have, the live virtual classes for a lot of our, specifically our adults with special needs groups. Like that's just been wonderful and able to continue. And, we're trying to provide as much as we can with this limiting time that we're in. And, we'll pick back up in full force when things calm down. We've also been able to, because we are a nonprofit, guys, that's also like another thing. We've been able, you're allowed to like shift your mission within any kind of like global crisis or something like that. So we were able to put together activity books and storybooks and things like that to send out to all of our students with like sign language lessons or fill-ins or whatever. But like for us, it's just providing like accessible activities, accessible anything for these students that are stuck home with minimal mode of communication amongst the family or minimal virtual accessible activities, so just doing whatever we can for them. But it's been a challenge. And then do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what we've done in the past for students who are initially uncomfortable, especially with those disabilities that aren't as passable, you've got students with equipment, machines that are making different sounds and things like that. So you definitely get those doe-eyed, like, what am I going to do about this situation? A ton of it comes, especially for the childhood population, a ton of it is your own modeling. If you don't react when the feed machine goes off, if you don't react when the walker bumps into you, then you're modeling for them that this is something that I'm okay with. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. I still feel safe. I'm in charge. I feel safe. You feel safe. And then just that explicit opening up the class too, with that intention of, especially with children and having experience of children with different needs, is that explicit, this is my space. I'm your dance teacher. This is the intention. This is how it's going to go. So in my space, I allow anyone that comes to dance class. I allow you in my dance class if you're having a good day or a bad day. This is my space. And we're all going to agree to this intention or this rule, so that it's not an option for the refusal or for the separation. And then always offering to students as well, being open to their feedback. So I hear you that you're not quite so comfortable with this. Let's try it and let's talk after class and see how we can make you feel more comfortable. But letting them know, like, the goal is for you to become comfortable. The goal is not for us to eliminate this factor.
Yeah.
It's let's work together to find a way to make you more comfortable in this situation, because this is what it's going to be like. And I can give you that assurance that every week you'll have students like this. So let's figure out what we can do to make it work for you, just like we figure out what we can do to make it work for them.
Yeah. And some other things to think about. That was great. Thank you. So you're always going to have someone that is uncomfortable or makes a comment, it's unfortunate, human nature. It all comes from the unknown and being somewhat naive to those experiences, and the more that you separate, the more you feed that, so right now it's uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. You start experiencing that more and more and having those integrated or inclusive environments, it becomes a new norm, and it becomes what's expected. And you're saying, like with anyone else, you're still going to have the kid that makes fun of someone else or says certain things, and that provides the opportunity to give like a learning opportunity for both the child who had been bullied, for lack of a better word, and the child who spoke out. One of the things that I do, I like reframe wording that has been said. So like if, for instance, we have this one student who, at least in the beginning, like it was just like a wildfire with her walker, and like would just like jam into things and run too fast and hit it, whatever. And we had this one, this other child who would be like, I don't want to stand next to her. I don't want to, like, what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Like whatever she would say, like, I don't like get her away from me. Like, I don't want, whatever. So I would frame that, okay, hey, Maddie, how about you stand in front of me and go first, so I'm out of the way, or whatever it is. I'm falling.
I think we pretty much answered it though.
Yeah. Reframing a kinder or more open way of whatever is being said in the moment. And providing the, like, what that student can come back with, like, that, like, so-and-so, like, that hurt my feelings, I'll try to stand over here, or, so that both parties aren't flipping out or whatever. And you can provide a little, like, lesson or something at your discretion to your typical, like, general ed students. Like, that's perfectly acceptable. Like I said earlier on, though, I think one of the best, most effective ways is having them experience the you know, like literally getting in someone else's shoes and doing that exercise with a blindfold or sitting in a chair or whatever, so that like, again, it's almost like that muscle memory thing. Like they actually like physically, personally get what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. You know, it's all a evolutionary process. So just.
And I think you gave us some really great tools to, you know, demonstrate, and that kind of kinesthetic, like I do, we do, you do, and like by exhibiting, you can modify behavior. And I just can't thank you enough, as well as Studio B for being here today. It is 2:15, so I want to respect folks who need like a 45-minute break, because we're jumping right back in at 3, which is exciting. This has been an extraordinary morning of conversations, and thank you so much for both of you for being here today and for sharing your innovation, as well as really helping us kind of open our eyes to inclusivity. Thank you.
You're so welcome, and thank you guys for the interest in creating these environments for your population. So it's beautiful that you have that interest and passion, and you know, just keep it going.
Absolutely.
Look forward to partnering in the future and seeing you at 2022 or whatever comes.
Yes, hopefully all good things, you know. And again, for all of the educators and studio owners watching, these videos, as well as resource guides, are all going to get sent out after after the conference kind of ends and after Forward Movement is wrapping up. So be on the lookout for that, because we also will be able to continue this conversation, because every conversation, embracing the COVID pivot that we talked about with Brooke and Kristen, the inclusivity that we talked about with Jari and Julia, like all of this is critical information. So just keep that in mind and be mindful of all of that as you continue your kind of action worksheets you're putting together, and as you're rewatching these videos. So I'm going to leave this room open. If you want to hop over to Fresh Writing Hip Hop class, that is going on until 2:50. And then at 3 o'clock, we will see you back here for Incorporating Inclusive Stories with Maureen Gonzalez and Maggie Gonzalez-Smith. So I will see you then. Take care of yourselves, get some water, get some food. We'll see you